Sentire Media.
Welcome to the Stop Italian Sounding podcast, uncovering authentic Italian food. I'm your host, Robert Campana, and join me as we delve into the rich heritage of genuine Italian food, exploring its legends, history, and traditions. Through important tips and insightful interviews with industry professionals, you'll gain a deeper understanding of authentic Italian food. Welcome back, everyone, to the Stop Italian Sounding show, uncovering authentic Italian food. So today we have a very interesting guest. I actually had the pleasure of meeting her at an event called The Power of Food and the Values of Roots at New York University. And her name is Germana Valentini. She's from Rome and is a TV writer. She's created TV formats for Mediaset and various other networks. She cooperates with different newspapers in Italy and abroad, dealing mainly with gastronomy, tourism, culture, and customs. She started to travel very young, following her passion of dance, and then she fell in love with New York and the United States, becoming in recent years an expert in Italian and Italian American communities of the United States, specifically in gastronomy of the roots, in Italian American gastronomic culture, and in roots tourism. She wrote a book called Veniero, which she graciously gifted to me. So I thank you very much for that. The book tells the story of the Italians of Manhattan's East Village, focusing on the life of Antonio Veniero, who emigrated from Vico Equense in 1885 and founded Veniero's Bakery in 1894. The bakery became a New York landmark, now run by fourth generation of the Veniero family. And the book weaves together historical, sociological, and cultural elements exploring Italian American life in New York, the great wave of Italian immigration, and the enduring bond between Italy and America. It also provides detailed genealogical research on three Italian families and captures the bakery's role as a gathering place and a cultural hub. So, Germana, thank you so much for being here today. When I first met you in New York, you seemed like a fascinating person just to sit down and have a coffee with. So, I'm so happy that you're here today. Thank you.
Ciao, Robert. Thank you so much for having me in your podcast. I'm really honored. And when I met you, I thought the same. I mean, we are on the same page on a lot of things, and what you're doing is to me very interesting. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Well, thank you for those kind words. I appreciate it. So, could you just tell our listeners more or less, who you are, what your story is, and what led you to where you are right now?
So, as you said, my first love was dance and ballet. But I also loved, learning foreign languages and cultures. So I started to travel since a very young age, following my two passions. And growing up, watching TV series such as Fame and movies like Grease or Dirty Dancing and loving musicals, of course, I fell in love with the United States and New York in particular. So becoming a choreographer, what I really have always tried to do was telling stories through dancing, but I loved in general the storytelling. So I remember my teacher at school at the university telling me I was very good at writing. So at one point, I was lucky enough to start working for television, and I decided to tell stories of Italian Americans once that I discovered that they have wonderful stories to tell. So I'm what I'm now because I was lucky enough to follow my dreams. That's basically the reason why I'm where I am now.
And following your dreams is the best thing to follow because you're following your passion, you're following what you specifically what specifically you like, and then you do great things with that. So you have a love for the Italian American culture is what I understood. So could you explain that love that you have for the Italian American culture? Because I am an Italian American, so
Yeah.
that's nice.
Traveling all over the US and mainly New York, I understood that the more I knew New York uh, and the stories of many Italian immigrants, and the more I felt at home. I mean, flavors, smells, tradition, and even ancient dialects that we have almost forgotten are still alive and jealousy mm, guarded by the community of the Italian and Italian Americans. So I've lived between Italy and the United States in the last few years, and I really don't feel the difference. I feel home when I'm here with the Italian Americans. So that's why I really love their way of living, even because it really reminds me of my childhood. We are losing a lot of those things that you guys are keeping. So it's like going back through time.
Right, right. Yeah, and Italian Americans tend to be quite proud of their heritage and proud of being quote unquote Italian. And you mentioned dialect because it's quite interesting that the dialect that some Italian Americans speak today, or specific words that they use, don't really exist anymore in Italy. So it's kind of like preserving a heritage that was lost in its motherland, so Italy, but has been maintained here. And I
Yeah,
also find that quite interesting as well.
it's basically the same, with food. I always like to say that Italian Americans are our Noah's Ark, because they are keeping, I mean, it reminds us what we are and what we were, and probably even what we will be, because as you know, there is no future without memory of the past.
Of
So
course.
our food cultural identity, recipes, products, and things are kept more here than in the motherland, and even for the language. So
Right.
that's the reason why I really love, keep digging in the Italian American culture and going back to the roots, which is going back to your roots, but even to our roots, because
Right.
are basically the same.
Right, of course, of course. So, as you mentioned, we of course have, being Italian Americans with Italians from Italy, we have many similarities, but also some differences as well, especially when it comes to food. And can you just comment on some of the similarities and differences that you've noticed from your point of view between Italian and Italian American food cultures?
So what I noticed is that most of the Italians of today that don't recognize themselves in Italian Americans food, it's mainly, in my opinion, because of two reasons. First thing first, they don't really understand what it meant being an Italian in the US at the very beginning of the 1900s. I mean, thinking about chefs. Today, if you open up a restaurant in New York, but the United States in general, you can have mozzarella di bufala, you can have parmigiano, you can have whatever you want to recreate the same exact recipe that you used to do in your motherland a few months ago. Can you imagine at the very beginning of the 1900 being here having basically nothing? So you were trying to recreate flavors and things with what you had. So you were forced to change a little bit the recipes that then became your recipe. Okay. So that's the first reason why we see differences, but also because a lot of the recipes that you guys have are ancient recipes that we lost in Italy, and you are keeping, and we are going to the Noah Ark again. So, for example, I always a couple of example. Yeah, exactly. Spaghetti meatball. Okay, everybody says no, spaghetti meatball is not Italian. No, they are. They are Italian. They used to be very popular at the beginning of the 1900. If you go in the Abruzzi region, they do something that is called chitarrina. The only difference is that meatballs are very little, and here you have, to learn things, because meatballs became so big because Italian America wanted to show they're wealthy once they could afford meat. That's why
Exactly.
meatballs. So I always say, before speaking you have to know what you're saying. You,
Exactly.
fettuccine alfredo, for example, everybody says no, not Italian. Yes, they are Roman. I'm from Rome. They were born in a restaurant called Alfredo alla Scrofa.
Exactly.
We call it in another way. We don't call fettuccine alfredo because the story of fettuccine alfredo was, brought to the U.S. By Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, that were two very famous actors. Then, of course, recipe was changed. You guys had chicken or shrimp or things like that. So we should talk about the real recipe of fettuccine alfredo, but they are Italian. And you can name it. In the book, I talk about the rainbow cookies.
That
Uh,
was going to be my next question. I was going to ask, could you comment on the rainbow cookies? Because I personally love the rainbow cookies, but
yes.
what could you tell us about them?
What happened with the rainbow cookies, which are one of the most famous items at Veniero's, is that they used to be Italian Christmas time cookies, because, as you can see, they have, green, red, and white, which are the colors of Christmas decoration. Then what happened is that in Italy, we lost the recipe. We stopped just doing it.
So the
And
recipe started in Italy, or that
yeah,
cookie.
exact.
Ah,
And
okay.
the Italian American kept on doing it because the cookies reminded the Italian flag.
Of course.
So because of their pride, food was one of the most important things for the Italian abroad. Just to make you understand, Italian workers were, very demanding on food. So people, the constructors used to want them because they were, they agreed to do anything. But the only problem that they have was that they were complaining about food. They just wanted to eat Italian. They didn't want to adapt. So
What's more Italian than that?
yeah, exactly, totally.
Wow, so that's something that I didn't know, that the rainbow cookies started as an Italian cookie, if you will. I always thought it was just an Italian American cookie, but there is its history. There's history really for everything. So your love for the Italian American community inspired you to write a book, and it inspired you to trace the story of Antonio Veniero and the history of the Veniero Bakery in New York City. So, what I could probably guess what inspired you. That's your passion and love for it. But could you just tell us some information about that, like how you started, what you did?
So I decided to write a TV format about the Italian Americans because I wanted to tell all these wonderful stories. And Mm, above all, because I wanted people to know that Italian Americans did a lot of positive things in the United States. Everybody's always talk about the negatives part of what we did, but we did a lot of beautiful and wonderful things. You could say that probably, I don't want to say all of the landmark in New York and important things of New York were done by the Italians, but mostly. And then, of course, think about Bank of America and Giannini, Petrosino. The Christmas tree lighting of Rockefeller Center was started by Italian, and so on. So entering Veniero in 2012 to record a TV show, what really struck me was the let me say, a really intoxicating scent of Italian pastry that welcomes you when you come in. That smell had, the same effect on me as a Spruce Madeleine. So today in Italy, if you enter in a pasticceria, as we call, there is a different smell than when I was a child. Because now we are trying, to Americanize for commercial reason. We do muffin or macarons or brownies, so the smell is totally different. It's
You
more
try and be
international.
global, exactly,
Yeah, exactly.
internationalized. Yes.
It's more international. So the smell of Veniero sweets that they made me return to my childhood. And it brought me back to when I went with my father of one of his best friend's bakery to have breakfast and buy my favorite cookie every Sunday morning. So I thought that probably the emotion I felt was exactly the same that was experienced for years by the Italian immigrants. Going back to Italy, being Meniero, and they've been there since 1894, always family run. So I thought I had to tell that story. And when the current owner told me that they were turning 125, I told him, Rob, you should write a book. And he proposed me to, why don't you write the book? And so the thing
Why don't you
started.
do it?
Yeah, was just starting, like, okay, I'll try, I'll do, and then became actually bigger than I expected.
That's great. That's awesome. How did Antonio Veniero's journey? He was from Vico Equense, correct?
Correct.
Which is located where specifically in Italy? That's
Near
near
Sorrento,
Sorrento.
very
Okay,
close
I
to
was going to say
Sorrento. Yeah.
perfect. So he arrived in New York in 1885. In your opinion, how does his personal story reflect the broader experience of Italian immigrants during that period?
I think that Antonio Veniero really embodies the Italian Americans that arrived here. They worked very hard. They have really endured everything, but eventually they made it. So, Italian immigrants had the Italian migration had two phases. One was before 1880, and mostly New York. The New York Italians were not so many, came mostly from northern Italy, Genoa or Piedmont mainly, and they were, political refugees, artists, professional. I don't know if you're aware that even Garibaldi was here in New York once. He had to escape. He was with Meucci in Staten Island. So that was mostly the Italian community at that time. And the mass immigration started after the unification of Italy, so after 1870. And they were mostly from South, Campania, Abruzzi, Puglia, Basilicata, Calabria, Sicily, you name it. And they were mostly farmers, desperate people, couldn't read or write, and they were escaping from a poor life. So many had to invest, all their possession for a ticket. So once they were here, if they were, not allowed to come in the US, they were desperate. They sometimes they even thought it was better to die rather than go back to Italy.
Wow. Yeah, at the time the
So
situation was so desperate and so
yeah.
so grave that I mean
Hmm.
it
You
was
know that
terrible.
Ellis Island was called the Island of Tears because of
Oh,
that reason.
I didn't know that that was its
Yeah, because most
nickname.
of the time families were splitted, or the ones who were forced to go back to Italy just throw themselves in the ocean. So
So much desperation
yeah,
and people risking their lives to come over to do in this case to do great things. I mean, Italian Americans, like you said, you named it, they've contributed in so many different ways, and Veniero's bakery is just one of them. And you mentioned that this bakery has endured for over 120 years. I think it's approaching 130 years, if I'm not mistaken.
this year it's 130.
And that's amazing, 130 years to find in the United States, because we typically associate things to be new, brand new. 20 years is old over here, but
Yeah, yeah.
130 is like is ancient, you know. So what do you think the key to its longevity is, especially through difficult times? I mean, 130 years, we're talking about like the Great Depression, World Wars, COVID-19 pandemic, where things were closing left and right. So why did it last so long, and why is it continuing to go strong?
Uh, I think that mostly uh, because of the importance of food for the Italian and the Italian American community. As I was telling when we met, being an Italian American, when we care about someone, we feed him or her. When we met someone, we don't ask, "How are you?" We ask, "Did you eat?" Because it's our
Can't
way,
be any more truer. That is the truest thing I've ever heard.
So, so food in daily life, it's very important to us. And even if you have to do many sacrifice, you look for the maximum comfort in food.
Of course.
And this is what Veniero was. Um, they were forced to have sometimes a poor life, but Sunday lunch was important, so they saved money to afford the cannoli or any other kind of sweet that they can have. And plus, Veniero was very famous for the confetti. So, can you imagine at that time, the only way that they had to celebrate properly, as they used to do in their motherland, was recreate the things with confetti and all the other, things that they used to have. So I think that that's the reason why Veniero really went through everything, and even because uh, it has always been a place where you could find family and help.
And then even if you didn't find family, you found friends that became like family, I'm
Exactly,
assuming.
exactly. Was a point of interest, but also part of social life, had a fundamental role in social life.
Right. And that's such a great vibe to experience when you go to a place like that and you feel like you're going home.
Yeah.
You feel like you could go there and chat and talk, and you're not bothering anybody, and you want to be there and they want you to be there as well. So,
And it
um
still is today. And they still have, locals that go basically every day. You can go, and that you will always find someone to talk to.
and that's great. That's kind of like typically in Italy, you have the piazza and then you have the bar, and people go and hang out at the bar. Even if they're not going to get anything, they know they're going to find a friend. And I'm sure that's what Veniero has become. And that's such a great thing. And it's actually rare to find in the United States, if you ask me. So you said you did some extensive research because you proposed for them to write the book, but they said, "Why don't you write the book?" And you ended up writing it, and you did a lot of research. So was there anything surprising that you found because you researched some families for this book?
Actually, a lot.
Oh, do
So
tell.
wasn't easy. First thing first, because at that time they used to have a lot of children, and they used to name all of them after the grandparents. So at one point, I had like 10 Ciro di Palma born basically in the same year. So it was,
So you're getting confused.
yeah, exactly. I
What
was
does this
trying
family
to
tree
figure
look
out,
like?
yeah, exactly. So if you take a look at the book, you have a QR code at the very beginning on each tree, because it was impossible to put the whole family trees inside the book. When I arrived at the publishing company, they were like, where am I supposed to put this genealogical tree that was huge? So we decided to find a solution with the QR code. But I
That was a smart
discovered,
solution.
yeah, I discovered wonderful things about, people in New York, people in Vico Equense, because the story is really linked to another cafe which is in Vico Equense, very
Oh,
famous, is Gran Caffè Zerilli,
oh
that
wow,
involves actually even Bruce Springsteen, because they are related as a family. So it's I found,
interesting.
yeah, so many things.
Wow.
The
So how is Bruce Springsteen this is news to me. We're related to a family over there?
Yeah, so the current owner, last name is Zerilli, and he's the great nephew of Antonio Veniero.
Okay.
And Robert great grandfathers is the brother of Bruce Springsteen's great grandfather. And they
Wow.
used, yeah, and they used to run together the Gran Caffè Zerilli in Vico Equense.
Wow. Wow. Very interesting. I mean, the world is so small.
Yeah, exactly.
When you start to dig up, you find out all these fun information about
Yeah,
different things.
and again, I could name a lot of things. The only thing that I really want to underline is that that book, I always say, that saved my life, because I was writing the book when I was here in New York doing the first researches. COVID started,
Oh,
so I had to go back super quickly to Italy. I think I caught last flight direct to Rome,
wow.
and it took 2 years for me to write a book, because doing researches during COVID time wasn't easy,
Right.
but it really saved my life, because I always say I was able to travel during COVID time
Hmm.
with my mind, thanks to this book.
And
So
that is a very positive way of looking at it. And I guess you
yeah,
could call it your COVID baby,
yeah,
you
exactly.
so that's great. So the East Village is still, and part of my ignorance when it comes to New York, because I'm from Southern New Jersey, but the East Village is still mainly Italian American, or what is it?
No,
It's no.
unfortunately not. It totally changed. And the thing that really made me sorry is that that neighborhood was a huge Italian neighborhood. It was really shaped by the Italians. But unfortunately, nowadays, you don't have any signs of it.
Okay.
If you dig a little bit, you can find a few hints, like, for example, the road sign at the corner between 12th Street and Avenue A. It's dedicated to the memory of Father Mancini. We would say Mancini,
In
which was,
English.
yeah, who was a beloved pastor of Mary Help of Christian, and testifies the flourishing parish life of the Italian community. The Mary Help of Christian Church was a huge church. They had a school attached, was huge, very big. They did a lot of things. They had a lot of feast, Saint Lucy, the Black Madonna, Mary Help of Christian, a lot of them. And other things that you can still see if you go on 12th Street, I think if 413 East, on the building, you still have the inscription G. de Bellis, as evidence that like many other buildings in the neighborhood, everything was built by the Italians.
Right.
And today you are not finding this anymore, but it was really, really Italian neighborhood.
Right, right, and that's so nice to reflect on, to see that how they contributed and how things still remain, and I guess how, time passes and other communities move in and they leave their mark as well.
Yeah, which is good. I mean, but I was very sorry when they tried to save Mariel for Christians, but they decided to build a condo instead of the church. So they destroyed everything, and you lose memories this way.
Right, of
That's the
course,
only thing now.
of course, and you have to preserve those memories as well, and you could do that through different avenues, such as books, such as film, and
Yeah.
just recounting those stories and those histories of, in this case, of Italian immigrants of the area. You mentioned that Veniero's, of course, is not just, it's still there. It's but at the time was such a meeting place for these Italian immigrants. But I'm assuming there were other locations as well that that could be considered areas that they gathered and they spoke, because Italian immigrants, when they came over to the United States, they tend to go in the same location. New York or Philadelphia even had a big Italian community, and other, look at Boston, for example. So they tend to stay together. So what made it such a special, at the time, a special gathering spot for Italian Americans, or I should say Italian immigrants?
Yeah, I took a look, doing my researches. If you take a look at the census at the very beginning of the 1900, all the last name in that area were Italians. Okay, and Veniero was smart enough to understand where the people in the neighborhood were from. They were mostly from Sicily and Apulia, and he started hiring pastry chef coming from that area to have the recipes that they used to have in their motherland. So basically they felt home. At the very beginning they also had a pool room, so for men was a place where to meet, play morra, play carte, drinking coffee. They used to roast their own coffee in the backyard.
Wow.
So, and they were one of the first to have an espresso machine. In the
Oh,
book,
wow.
you can find a short history of the coffee and the espresso in the United States and Italy.
That's pretty cool.
Uh, the
That's pretty
family mood
interesting.
inside, thank you. And you can still find regulars, as I was telling you. So again, what's the fact of being home? They were open at, I don't want to say 24 hours per day, but mostly. So
Well, between
people that were,
roasting, preparing things.
yeah, but even because they knew that people, I don't know, working at night wanted to have breakfast before going home. At the same time, people working very early in the morning used to go there before going to work. So
Right, right.
what's really a meeting point?
Exactly. So now that I'm just thinking, what are some more, so they have a lot of Italian pastries, and then it evolved into Italian American things, of course, with its own history. But what are some Italian American pastries that are popular from Veniero's, that maybe were possibly even invented by them? I'm just curious,
Uh,
because I see the Italian American cuisine as kind of like the, if you will, the 21st region of Italy, if that makes sense. Italy has
yeah,
20 different cuisines. Then we have Italian American, which is a branch out of Italy.
yeah, totally.
So could you comment on some of the things that they do that aren't Italian but are specifically Italian American?
To be honest, I can just say maybe cheesecake, the New York
Okay.
cheesecake.
The famous
That's
New
the
York
only
cheesecake.
things,
Okay.
because as far as the rest, they still use the same recipes that they had.
Wow.
And yes, nothing changed. Ingredients are the same. The way of doing are basically the same,
Wow. So
and
they
they
really
have,
maintain their identity as well.
yeah, totally. They do cookies, they do, seasonal items for Christmas or Easter, but that's not really everything. Everything is really Italian. Even cake, for example, you don't find the American taste of, buttercream or things like that. It's
Okay.
always whipped cream, regular Italian cream, and that's it. Sponge cake, the Italian way.
Okay. And then it's also a normal Italian bar, if you will. So
Yeah,
go and get coffee, cafe,
cappuccino, yeah.
cappuccino. Okay, okay. Very interesting. It's a place I haven't visited yet, but I'm more as we talk about it, I have that desire to want to go and visit it. So the book not only tells a personal story, but also serves as history of Italian immigration, which is something we shouldn't forget, to the United States. So how do you see Antonio's story as representing the Italian immigrant experience?
I think that his family, even with his children and all the other relatives, really grew up with New York. So I think that you can find a very strong link between the growth of the Italian American and the growth of the city of New York.
Hmm.
So what happened to Antonio happened basically to a lot of Italian American who came here with nothing, just looking for uh, a job and we say bread,
Right, right,
so meaning something to eat.
right,
And they find, as we say in Italy, when you are very lucky and you become rich, we say you find the America
right,
because of that reason, because they found their America, the American dream.
right.
Let me just think about one of the most important Italian American that we can name. It's Joe DiMaggio.
Hmm.
It really embodies, the American dream.
Right, right,
He came poor. He was just, the son of a fisherman coming from Sicily and then became a legend. And Antonio Veniero, in a way, did the same. It's not so much famous himself, but the bakery is famous all over the US. They ship all over the US. It's very famous. So mostly, a lot of Italian American did this.
right, right. Understood. No, that's great. So they do ship around the United States.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Okay, okay. So for our listeners, make sure you keep that in mind, and I'm sure they have a website as well. They could
Yeah.
go and check it out and place some orders. So you describe entering Venieros as a journey through time because it's 130 years old, which indeed it probably is quite an experience. So what is your hope that readers and visitors take away from the experience of learning about this piece of New York and Italian history?
First of all, I'm hoping that we will be ready with the English version as soon as possible because I know that a lot of Italian Americans and Italian people can read Italian. So,
Mhm.
um, of course, I wanna to show that any cookie, cake, or pastry of Veniero is a sensory journey. Each bite is an explosion of taste, awakening all the senses. But I want to underline that for Italians and Italian Americans, food, it's not just food, it's something for soul and memories. And
I like that, something
eh,
for the soul and the memories.
yeah, entering Veniero, it's not only a gastronomic experience, it's a journey through time, a journey to the history of four families. This book is, of course, this, but it's also the history of a city, a district, an immigrant colony, and the story of the lives of brave and men and women that left their homeland and they built another country being part of it.
And they found the success, much success.
Yeah.
Germana, I want to be very respectful of your time. I thank you for having this conversation about a piece of history in New York, a piece of Italian American history in New York. As we are having this conversation, it's October, which is Italian American month, and I think it's good that we reflect on the successes that Italians had here in the United States and that Italian Americans also have had here in the United States, and the bridge that there is between, like you said, the United States and Italy when we speak about the immigration from the 19th century, the 1900s, I should say. So thank you very much for this. This was awesome.
I thank you. I'm deeply honored to have been part of your podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Grazie.
Grazie, ciao.
Ciao. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the stories of authentic Italian cuisine. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more insights and interviews. Also, feel free to reach out with your thoughts or questions on our social media channels at Stop Italian Sounding or on our website stopitasounding.com. Grazie a tutti e alla prossima.
Sentire Media.
Hey, podcast producers and show hosts. Do you want to join a podcast network that celebrates all things Italian? At Sentire Media, we understand the allure of Italy and its unique culture. Our devoted team of hosts and producers are all driven by their shared passion for Italy. And we work tirelessly to create the best lifestyle podcasts and content that will whisk you away to the very heart of Italy. With us, you can savor the mouth-watering flavors, get lost in the stories from the past, break down the cultural barriers, and truly immerse yourself in the vibrant traditions of this intoxicating country. If you have a great podcast idea or are already in production and would like to join Sentire Media, head over to sentiremedia.com, that's SENTIRE media.com, and find out how to submit your show.